It was baffling to think that someone was out there at night, in the bushes with latex gloves, strategically placing piss bottles on an electrical box. Who was placing these bottles? Is a different person picking them up? For the past 2 years, an electrical box in my neighborhood had been overrun with bottles of piss. And not your normal run-of-the-mill truck driver bottle of piss, but an assortment of different size bottles, different colors, and sometimes complemented with a hand-drawn note. The bottles would usually appear in the morning and then disappear in the late afternoon or evening, with this transaction occurring a few times a week. The word of this piss-infested electrical box spread throughout the neighborhood, even to the point where a third-party vigilante left an aggressive letter threatening the culprit. The notoriety of the situation grew, and so did the strength of the urine, making its mark atop the electrical box and cementing itself as its own neighborhood landmark. Who was placing these bottles? Who was the vigilante? Is a different person picking them up? Finally, my curiosity got the best of me. So I purchased the DigitGarden 4K waterproof trail camera with the hopes of answering these questions. But my main holdup was setting up the camera. The electrical box is located on a busy street, and if anyone saw me next to it, then they would immediately assume that I was the pisser, and my reputation would be forever ruined. So I hit up my friend Grant, who's always filming his own videos and skits, and is usually in costume, figuring that he would be a good source for a decoy look.
Ayo. Yeah, I have a construction vest and a helmet you can borrow. I also have a brown lunch bags if you need to have a sack lunch with you. Also, let me know if you need any help putting it up.
The next day, Grant and I arrived at the location in our decoy looks. Me as a standard construction worker, and Grant as a recently divorced, disheveled project manager. The two of us were able to fool the public as we successfully set up the DigitGarden 4K waterproof trail camera. The following morning, I went to go check the electrical box and couldn't believe my eyes. Piss. I honestly thought this would take a week or so, but we were able to capture the drop-off on the first night, but inherently knew that the pickup was the most intriguing part of the story. So after consulting with Grant, we agreed to wait it out one more night. Unfortunately, the piss bottles were still there the following morning. No pickup. It had been too long and there was a high chance that the batteries to my DigitGarden 4K waterproof trail camera were dead. Also, since Grant and I had been posting about this in real time, there was a great deal of pressure building from people online. I couldn't take it anymore. Making sure the coast was clear, I quickly collected the DigitGarden 4K waterproof trail camera and went home to review the clips. Finally, the mystery was about to be solved. The footage was baffling. I hadn't even thought about the drop-off coming from beyond the wall, which also happened to be the side of a highway. I had so many questions, and so did everyone following the saga. Grant and I both felt that this was just the tip of the iceberg and that we're onto something much bigger. After capturing the mysterious video footage of the initial piss drop-off, Grant and I decided to take the weekend to process what we had just witnessed. It was baffling to think that someone was out there at night, in the bushes with latex gloves, strategically placing piss bottles on an electrical box. First thing Monday morning, I drove to the site to check if the bottles were gone. They weren't. In fact, they had doubled. Things were escalating quickly, so Grant decided to order a second DigitGarden 4K waterproof trail camera, and we devised a plan to capture what was occurring beyond the wall. For this intricate of a setup, we need a bigger crew of decoy construction workers. Fortunately, Grant had a construction worker friend who agreed to help out and lend us gear while also giving us a few pointers on how we could better sell the look. I didn't have any construction worker friends, but I had a motorcycle friend named Robin, who basically looks like a construction worker, and I was certain that he would help out. But Robin was busy that day, so I hit up my friend Katz, who's usually down for anything. Hey Katz, I'm working on a project and need some extra bodies. Mainly need you to come and be a construction worker.
Okay. I've never done construction before, but fuck it, I'll try anything once. Hey, wait, is this for the piss thing?
With both Katz and Grant's real construction friend on board, it was time to head to the location and suit up. We were a squad of construction workers ready to take on whatever construction worker things that were in our path. And in this case, setting up 2 DigitGarden 4K waterproof trail cameras around an electrical box stacked with piss bottles. We played our parts perfectly. I did all the work while everyone else told me how to do it. Grant, the recently divorced, disheveled project manager, loomed over, micromanaging us to a T. With cameras set up, our operation was an all-in-all success. Now it was time to wait. The next morning, I returned to the box only to see that there was a new batch of piss bottles. I knew because this was fewer than before, and one bottle had a particular darker tint. I immediately hit up Grant with the good intel, but was only met with some disastrous news on his end. And out of nowhere, Grant hit me with the classic, "I'm going to Norway today" excuse.
I'm going to Norway today.
I had to retrieve these DigitGarden 4K waterproof trail cameras, but also knew it would be too risky to collect on my own. I needed a project manager, and I knew just the guy. Hey Katz, can you be my project manager?
Easy.
Also, try to match Grant's decoy outfit. disheveled.
You got it. Plus, I'm actually divorced.
Katz and I met at the location, again in our decoy looks. Me as a normal construction worker, and Katz as an actually recently divorced, disheveled project manager. And we were able to retrieve both Digit Garden 4K waterproof trail cameras without any problems. We had 2 issues with the Digit Garden 4K waterproof trail cameras. The first one I set up failed to record anything. Not really sure why, but it's something I'll be voicing my frustrations with the Digit Garden customer service at a future date. The other issue being that the second camera shifted positions upon setup and framed out the electrical box. But beyond the wall, we did get a major hit. Footage of the culprit in the act, revealing a man in his mid-30s to 40s wearing latex gloves and a flashlight, pouring liquids from one bottle to another, then methodically placing the piss on the electrical box. Also, the timestamp is almost identical to the previous footage. This clearly seemed premeditated and very intentional. I thought getting a visual of the culprit would give me some closure, but in reality, it only doubled my curiosity. Is this some abstract performance artist, or some family man's late night fetish? For every question I answer, I seemingly raise 2 more. What are his motives? Who is doing the pickups? And is that actually urine? The electrical box was stacked with piss. A couple days had passed since we captured the footage of the culprit in the act, and I was reluctant to set up my Digit Garden 4K waterproof trail cameras, mainly because my 2 project managers were missing. Grant was abroad, enjoying himself on a meaningless trip to Norway, while Katz was tied up with many of life's distractions. So I took this time to monitor and track the culprit's movements, day in and day out, the comings and goings of the piss bottles. But as the days passed, the bottles remained on the electrical box. More bottles would appear overnight, some with more labels than usual, and he even went to the extent of placing decals on the box. Was he taunting me? Was this piss cat and mouse? But one thing I did notice, no one was picking them up. I returned to the footage from the Digit Garden 4K waterproof trail camera that had shifted in the tree, framing out the electrical box, hoping that I would discover some clue regarding the pickup that day. Although this was quite the task because it recorded every single person, cyclist, and car that passed by. The only thing I was able to capture was a man in a construction worker type vest observing and taking photos of the bottles. He then moves out of frame but looks to be collecting them. Was this a city cleanup crew guy? Or a sketchy piss recipient who was wearing a city cleanup crew guy decoy outfit? Meanwhile, online, my Piss Saga intro video was racking up views, even to the point where people from the neighborhood would reach out and send their own piss bottle stories and photos. One person sent me an origin story about how the piss bottle started off on a different electrical box at a nearby park, and then gradually moved east, eventually claiming the current box. Another unsettling anecdote was about a time when the culprit tied a bottle to a string and hung it from a tree branch. People were consumed with piss and had started developing their own theories as to what was occurring beyond the wall. A drug drop disguised as human urine? Clean urine for people who needed to pass a drug test? Or just a person that wanted to showcase their massive collection of piss? Then someone sent me a message that caught my interest. A user claimed that they owned a crime scene bio and hazardous waste company and had been doing cleanups at the piss box for the past 2 years. Within their company, employees referred to the culprit as the P Bandit and had inside knowledge that checked out with my footage of the city's cleanup crew guy. They even let me know when they were going to pick up next, which checked out. This negated a lot of theories regarding the pickup, but I still had one question that had been eating at me this entire time, and there was really only one way I could answer it. We were going to have to collect a sample. We knew the Piss Bandit was extremely calculated and that he would be alerted if one of his bottles was missing. We were playing chess and needed to offer a gambit to gain positional advantage. By this I of course mean we implement a decoy piss bottle. Grant returned that Saturday and I had him meet me directly from the airport. We then got straight to work. Using a mixture of unsweetened pure leaf green tea and unsweetened pure leaf regular tea, we were able to concoct the perfect human urine decoy. Next, we had to replicate the Piss Bandit's hand-drawn calling card, and that was usually left on the bottle's inner label. Fortunately, Grant was known to have terrible handwriting and was able to perfectly match the signage. Then, we headed to the location in our decoy outfits. Me as a normal construction worker, and Grant as a recently divorced, disheveled project manager who just returned from a meaningless trip to Norway. It was our most daring mission yet. We had a plan that we would follow precisely. I would use a specimen grabber thing to pick up the real bottle of piss, while Grant quickly replaced it with a decoy. Then he would take our sample and secure it in our own custom-made specimen box. We had our sample. Now it was time to undergo the test. Grant and I had successfully collected one of the piss bottles from the electrical box. Now it was time for the tests. Fortunately for me, Grant volunteered to do all the heavy lifting, mainly because he suffered from a condition called anosmia, a disorder that causes its victim, Grant in this case, to lose all sense of smell, which was perfect because he wouldn't be affected by whatever fumes were emitted during the urinalysis. We had two primary objectives we needed to achieve. Our first was to see if the fluid in the bottle was actually piss and not some mysterious liquid decoyed as piss. So I ordered an Amazon.com instant result 10-panel home urinalysis test kit that gives you an accurate reading in just 60 seconds. Our second objective was to see if there were any drugs present in the liquid, especially since the majority of the pissheads online thought this entire scenario was a drug drop-off operation. So I ordered an Amazon.com easy at-home 5-panel drug testing kit that gives you results in just 5 minutes. We got straight to work. Grant was in the zone, in his natural state. He flawlessly completed the urinalysis without any problems. We got our results in 60 seconds, although I couldn't interpret them because I wasn't a medical professional. So I sent a photo of our test strip and its legend to my friend Niall, who is a professional ICU nurse. While we waited for Niall to decipher the urinalysis, we went ahead and executed the drug test. Again, Grant performed the task masterfully. We had our results in exactly 5 minutes, and we were able to conclude that whatever liquid was in that bottle did not contain any drugs. It was drug-free.
Looks to be in good health.
It's definitely urine.
Definitely.
Clean, healthy piss. We were baffled. A majority of our theories had been shot down. Nothing made sense. We were dealing with a guy who just leaves healthy piss on an electrical box in Pasadena. Something wasn't adding up. We needed more footage of the culprit, but there was no way I could do this with the highly unreliable DigiGarden 4K waterproof trail cameras. So I spent a few days doing extensive research, scouring numerous trail camera and hunting forums, and finally I was able to conclude that the Tacticam Reveal X Pro cellular trail camera was our golden ticket. It had a built-in LCD screen, integrated GPS tracking, and most importantly, cellular capabilities that could send images and videos straight to your phone. Grant and I positioned the Tacticam Reveal X Pro cellular trail camera beyond the wall, on a tripod, tucked away in the bushes. This was our eye in the sky. And just like that, we had footage of the culprit as he lurked in the brush at 4 a.m, waiting for cars to pass so he could place his piss bottles. I was focused, tracking him, studying him, learning his ways. He was coordinated and consistent. My inside person would usually alert me when the bottles were being collected by the hazardous waste team, and then that same evening, he would strike, leaving an abundance of bottles for the morning commuters to see. One thing that did stand out to me was his clothes. An extremely tight shirt, ironic hiking shoes, and baggy cargo pants with the unnecessary utility knife in pocket. These three characteristics combined had to mean only one thing. He was an artist. I had a relatively elevated understanding of artists since I had spent a good amount of time working in the art department for photo and video shoots, and I knew that there was only one way to deal with a self-proclaimed artist. We were going to have to give him an interview. I met up with Grant at his warehouse first thing in the morning. Grant had a good amount of junk that we were able to scrounge up and use. Our plan was to create a large interview questionnaire pad that we could leave beyond the wall for the culprit to fill out and not risk revealing his artist persona. Feeling confident after flawlessly completing the urinalysis test, Grant wanted to head up the design of the interview pad. He was starting to lean into his project manager role, but unfortunately, his left-handedness got the best of him, and I had to take over. We knew that the questionnaire would be jarring at first glance, so we wanted to butter up the culprit with a nice introductory message, conveying that we were fans of his work, as well as telling him something every artist wants to hear. We had to compare him to the goats of his industry. We then asked 5 questions regarding his process, while attaching a Sharpie to his shoelace so he could answer. We also gifted him a headlamp so he could continue on with his art in the darkness. The next day, we arrived at the location. Me as a normal construction worker, and Grant as a recently divorced, disheveled project manager who just absolutely crushed a urinalysis test. At this point, being construction workers and project managers was second nature to us. We were quick and covert as I scaled the wall and placed the interview pad for only our piss artists to see. Everything was set. Now, all we had to do was wait. With our interview pad in place and the Tacticam Reveal X Pro cellular trail camera hidden in the brush, Grant and I were ready for our grand conclusion and to finally discover why this artist was stockpiling piss bottles on the electrical box. That night felt like a piss-induced Christmas Eve. It was impossible to sleep knowing that I'd likely wake up in the morning with an answer to a question that had been haunting me and my neighborhood for the past several years. But instead of presents, I woke up to 0 notifications from my Tacticam Reveal X Pro cellular trail camera. This was very unusual, especially since its field of view was centered on a high-traffic zone with constant cars passing by. So I drove to the location and suited up for a quick check-in, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that the bottles were back. The artist had struck, but when I scaled the wall for a closer look, I was met with extreme disappointment. The interview pad had been untouched. Nothing. And even worse, the piss culprit stole my Tacticam Reveal X Pro cellular trail camera. I had been blindsided. Our interview pad must have been too jarring, leading him to check his surroundings and discover our prying eye. This was a huge pain, not just because he was now aware of us, but because I had spent countless hours researching, setting up, and troubleshooting trail cameras, and now mine was gone. Fortunately, the Tacticam Reveal X Pro cellular trail camera had built-in GPS, and if you were ever to turn it on, it would automatically ping my phone with a check-in photo as well as precise latitude and longitude coordinates. Though when I took a closer look at the fresh batch, I did notice something unusual. A message written on one of the bottles. This was very concerning, but didn't necessarily provide any motive as to why he was doing this. As the days passed, there were no updates and no additional bottles. The usual piss-infested electrical box had now transformed into a normal-infested electrical box. A once iconic staple in the neighborhood was just now another gray eyesore on the side of the road. It had lost its pizzazz. Was my intrigue responsible for scaring off a budding street artist? I was starting to understand the sentiment of how you never really appreciate true art until it's gone. Meanwhile, online, the piss heads were frothing for more content, demanding updates to our investigation. Pressure was building, and I wanted to deliver, but it would be impossible to do if the piss bandit was gone. Then one evening, my phone was alerted. My stolen Tacticam Reveal X Pro cellular trail camera sent a check-in photo of an image of a couple vehicles parked alongside a road with what appeared to be the ocean in the background. This was puzzling because the ocean is extremely far from where the electrical box is located, 20 miles to be exact, which is a 2.5-hour commute. Sadly, the culprit didn't have the device turned on long enough for it to send me GPS coordinates. A couple days later, I was alerted again, this time with a beautiful scenic photo of a grandiose cliff overlooking the ocean. Thankfully, I was sent the exact GPS coordinates, which I immediately plugged into Google Maps. Sunset Cliffs, San Diego, California. A popular, affluent coastal community known for its hiking trails, surf spots, and sunset views. This was far, 126 miles to be exact, which is also a 2.5-hour commute. The culprit had either taken a vacation down south, sparking up a newfound love for scenic photography, or he was toying with us. My gut instinct was that he had moved on, replacing his abstract art with something a bit more traditional. But that following Tuesday morning, I was proven wrong. He had struck, breaking his nearly 2-week-long dormancy. But again, our interview pad remained answerless. He was a devoted artist who worked late nights and went to great lengths to conceal his identity. Of course, he didn't want to answer a bunch of questions about his process. We had to keep it simple, so we replaced the interview pad with an interview dry erase board, this time with only one question, which he again ignored while hitting the electrical box with a record-setting motherlode drop, 1 gallon of piss. The artist was back, and more prolific than ever, and our unsuccessful attempts at an interview left Grant and I feeling cornered and out of moves. We feared that the worst was coming to fruition, an inevitable checkmate. The culprit had hit the electrical box with a 1-gallon jug of piss. He was on the offensive, toying with us, even leaving a demonic smiley face as a taunt. But there was one play that lingered in the back of our heads, a Hail Mary of sorts, something many of the pissheads online had been suggesting throughout this entire saga, a stakeout. This was a very risky ploy, and something that couldn't be taken lightly. We were dealing with an individual who places 1-gallon jugs of urine on an electrical box at 4 a.m. Who knows what else he was capable of. So Grant and I started to brainstorm some ways to move forward with a full-on live stakeout. Unfortunately, I was ruled out of every scenario, mainly because being a black man in Pasadena idling in the car after sundown would have the cops called in a matter of minutes. So it all fell on Grant's shoulders now, which he was very confident about moving forward with the task. But I had my doubts. Grant was one of those guys who just, he's just one of those guys. But he was trying to prove himself. He was persistent, and I could tell that he really wanted to be the one to catch the piss culprit and interview him. Even though he was adamant about doing the stakeout, I didn't feel comfortable putting Grant in a situation where his life could be at risk. I needed to see for myself that he had the ability to tackle this alone. So I set up a staged piss electrical box scenario. We were able to achieve an almost exact replica of the location using a bunch of junk from Grant's warehouse, as well as various faux piss bottles made from our green tea mixture. I then had my friend Ian, who was a trained actor, meet up and play the role of the piss culprit. In order to embody the character and his motivations, I had Ian study the plethora of footage that we captured with the Reveal X Pro cellular trail camera. Then we did a couple of run-throughs as him as the piss culprit, strategically placing the piss bottles on our prop electrical box. Ian was a pro and immediately had me sold on him playing the part for our dry run operations. Now, it was Grant's turn to show me that he had what it took to confront the culprit. Our first scenario was if Grant wore a ghillie suit to blend into the adjacent bushes beyond the wall. Then he'd reveal himself.
Hey.
But this was quickly shot down because it would be too startling for the culprit. Our second scenario focused on creating a large enough space between Grant and the culprit. So we had him approach from the street side. But even with that distance, Grant was still met with reactive hostility. Grant wasn't necessarily having a good time, but fortunately, Ian was able to break character and talk some sense into him in regards to how important these simulations were to our investigation. After a quick breather, Grant was back on board. We approached our third scenario differently and had Grant implement an aggressive tactic, hoping to scare the culprit into submission.
Yo, motherfucker. Let's go with this shit.
But unfortunately, this backfired, and Grant was met with extreme physical and mental punishment. After witnessing this train wreck, I had zero faith in Grant and knew there would be no way that he could successfully pull off a stakeout. We were back to the drawing board. I figured the only way we could confront the culprit in real time was with an actual security camera that we could speak through. So I did a bit of research online and settled with the Reolink Go PT Plus, a state-of-the-art piece of machinery with two-way audio and a 360-degree pan-tilt access. The only thing we needed to be worried about was the culprit stealing the camera again. We needed a vantage point from above, so I reached out to my motorcycle friend Robin, who also moonlights as a subpar carpenter, hoping he would have some tools, or at least a ladder, which he did. The next day, Robin and I headed to the worksite as a couple construction workers who owned a ladder. From there, Robin was able to ascend above the wall and secure the Reolink Go PT Plus to a bundle of tree branches using a sturdy zip tie securing system. Our new eye in the sky was set. Now all we needed was the piss culprit to strike. A week had passed with no action. I knew he'd strike again, but it was just a matter of when, and if Grant and I would be awake to interview him, especially since his previous hits had been at 4 a.m. Then one evening, while visiting my folks' place and listening to my dad's long-winded explanation for his love for CBS, my phone was alerted. It was the Reolink Go PT Plus. Finally, we had him in our crosshairs, the piss culprit, in the act of placing a fresh batch of bottles. He looked different this time, now sporting a balaclava and a shirt that read volunteer on the back. It was apparent that he knew we were onto him, and now went to great measures to conceal his identity while still showcasing his knack for community service. This was the first time witnessing his actions live, and now I had the capabilities of communicating with him. I zeroed in and took my shot.
You have an artist name?
The artist had zero interest in being interviewed. Grant and I were down 2 cameras and our funds were depleted. All we had left were the highly unreliable DigiGarden 4K waterproof trail cameras, and there was no way I was going to set myself up for another letdown. But one thing did catch my attention. Online, there was a large group of piss deniers who thought this entire saga was staged, that I was a covert agent working for GTCM, or Global Trail Camera Market, who had designed an intricate ploy in order to sell more trail cameras. This was a wild theory, and not sure how or why it came to be, but it got me thinking. Hi Janine, I'm working on a documentary about mysterious piss artists and have been using your cameras in an attempt to communicate with him, although he keeps stealing them and we ran out of money. Would love to collaborate with you and your company.
Hi, Derek. Thanks for reaching out and glad to meet you. I think we would create something amazing together. I will arrange the shipment and keep you updated.
I was now officially sponsored by Reolink and was shipped a trio of premium top-tier 4G security cameras, the Reolink Go PT Ultra, the Reolink Go Ranger PT, and the Atlas PT Ultra, all powerhouses in the field of surveillance. This wasn't my first foray into sponsorship. About 18 years ago, I was a sponsored skateboarder by a board company called Foundation, though my time with them was cut short because the team manager didn't think I was doing enough to promote their brand. So I was relieved of my duties and I never saw another Foundation package ever again. With great sponsorship comes great responsibilities. I had to learn from my past mistakes, and there was no way I was going to let this happen again. Grant and I's camera arsenal had been replenished. We were on an all-time high as newly sponsored RealLink team members, but that all came to a halt when I received some concerning news. Someone had installed a metal pyramid atop the electrical box as a piss bottle deterrent. It was extremely well crafted and looked to be bolted in. Was this the city? Or a neighborhood vigilante with a metalsmith background? A third party had just inserted themselves into our game of piss chess, and I had no idea what the artist's next move would be. Meanwhile, concern was growing online, and there seemed to be a division between people's views of the piss pyramid. Some were in favor of it, applauding its simple yet effective design, believing that this was the end of the saga, while others thought it was blasphemous and took the side of the artist, rooting him on with the confidence that he'd prevail. Amongst this discourse, it caught a level of attention none of us previously fathomed. Noah Goldberg, a reporter for the LA Times, wanted to do an article on the piss artist and our operation of trying to get to the meaning behind it all. He insisted on joining us on our next excursion down to the electrical box, which I thought was a great idea, especially because it gave me an opportunity to use my new RealLink security cameras and publicly promote the brand, fulfilling my sponsorship duties to Janine and the team at RealLink. Then, about a day before our walkthrough, the artist struck. He managed to disassemble the metal pyramid and lay a new batch of bottles, now labeled piss instead of his usual human urine. This was a first, and a declaration that he had seen my Piss Saga videos online. The artist had triumphed over the piss pyramid, like an unstoppable force. I was in awe of this move and knew this meant escalation, not between us, but between him and whoever installed the contraption. We were caught in the middle of a pissing contest and decided that this was bigger than us and that we needed to take a step back and just surveil. The next day, Grant and I met the LA Times at the location. They conducted a quick interview where we laid out everything that had occurred up until this point. Now it was time to head to the piss box. But first, I made sure that they were equipped with decoy construction worker outfits as a safeguard for their reputation. I also felt that this was the perfect time to promote my new trio of RealLink security cameras, which Grant and I had created complex camouflage systems for each unit as a way for them to blend perfectly into the environment and not alert the artist. I promoted the cameras perfectly and made sure to address each by its full model name, as well as going into great detail about their specs and capabilities. My sponsorship duties were fulfilled. Janine would be proud.
Proud of you, Derek.
We then made our way to the piss box, where the new batch remained, glistening. Remnants of the metal pyramid lay on the ground, like a defeated pawn. Noah and his staff photographer were fascinated by the glowing yellow bottles, making sure to document everything they could. We scaled the wall, proceeding to go beyond and give them a visual layout of the artist's studio and the vantage point of his canvas, all while setting up our new RealLink trash cameras. Our goal was to monitor the moves of both the artist and the new third-party challenger. But then, the challenger executed their next move by implementing the installment of a heavy-duty Piss Pyramid 2.0. The metalsmiths looked professional, and I believe it was now safe to say that this was the work of the city. They were swift and acting promptly, a characteristic the government usually lacks, which meant this was serious. The city had successfully knobbed the spot, and I was curious as to how the artist would respond. For days, Grant and I waited. We had courtside seats to this historical contest between two rivaling giants. Our fingers were crossed, hoping we'd get to witness the next move in real time. But instead of piss, we got piss heads. People who had been following the saga online visited the box. From documenting the pyramid to searching for cameras, it was beginning to be evidently clear that the spot was blown. Also blown was Grant and I's cover.
Strange one here. A mystery man is making his mark on the streets of Pasadena, and it's not exactly something that you'd want to see or smell, for that matter.
Okay, here we go. Two local filmmakers are getting plenty of attention these days, tracking down the so-called bandit.
Grant Yansura and his buddy Derek Milton are about 2 years into documenting the mysterious bottles.
The bottles keep turning up on a specific Pasadena Water and Power electrical box.
Son dejadas arriba de una caja del departamento de...
Tested it and found out, in fact, that it was clean, healthy, human urine.
We had no idea that the LA Times story about the piss electrical box would take off in the way that it did.
Some of the people that see it now are like, well, it's his artistic expression.
That's the piss artist who's clearly doing some kind of installation.
It's Banksy with urine.
You're like Banksy,
So they're trying to do reverse psychology?
They tried, but he wouldn't answer.
No, of course not, because he can see right through that. He's playing fucking 5D chess.
Concerns spread worldwide, and much like our own investigation, everyone wanted to know the meaning behind it all. People sent us a plethora of piss-related content, from memes to videos to handcrafted artwork, even to the point of getting recognized in public.
Everywhere, and see there, people honk at you. They say, you're the P guys, and it's not really what we wanted to be.
Our entire mission of dressing up as decoy construction workers was in order to not be associated with piss, but it had backfired. We were now synonymous with piss. And it was then that it dawned on me. We had been so consumed with our own intrigue and wanting to know why, to the point of developing an unhealthy obsession with trail and security cameras, that we had lost our focus. The artist was aware of our intention to communicate, yet still chose not to. And our own infatuation as to why may have led to the obstruction of him creating more. Fortunately, everywhere you look, a canvas exists. Whether it controls traffic signals, sources electricity to nearby homes, or houses a heavily damaged piss bottle deterrent, the city is full of them. And if you ever find yourself in Pasadena and happen to stumble upon the original artist's electrical box, remember to look above and beyond the wall.
My bad.